In this chapter we're going to take a look at the various storage, media and printers that I have for the C64 and VIC20. And the first printer that comes to mind, at least in my case, is the MPS 801, which was the very first printer I ever owned back in the day. And as you can see, this looks a bit rough. It's a failed retro-bright experiment. This whole cover looks nice from the inside, but pretty shitty from the outside, so never bleach that kind of plastic. And you can also see that this has this marble effect right here. Got it with the manual. Just notice that this is actually the Italian manual. I guess I have a German one around somewhere. There it is. No, it's the English one. Better even. Yeah, it's a 7-needle printer, which means that here's a demo print that even on letters like the G here in my name, you won't get the lower print where the lower angle of the G has to go below the F and the A here. It's just printed in one line. So there were 9-needle printers which actually could do additional 2 dots down here, and that would give the usual typeface you are used to today. But this 7-needle printers only did a straight line of 7 needles, all the letters in just one line, no overprint or underprint, or however this is called. I actually used this to explain to my son how this works. So here are the 7 needles on the printhead, and you have 2 additional on other printers which have 9 needles. This has only 7, and so you only get this G. Yeah. Another thing about this printer, oh look, I even got some fresh ribbons unused. You can still buy these, I guess, and did not get to clean this very properly because after the failed retro-bright I didn't see much of a point there. It's pretty crusty. It only has one power button on the back, no, on the side, I guess. Yeah, on the side, right here. And since this gets or can get daisy chained to the 5041, you can select which channel you want. Right here it's 4, 5 or T. Not quite sure what T means. Maybe it's just the next number in line. And it does have a paper advance button, which just advances the paper. So this does print with the endless paper, which is put in here, put it in from behind, clip it in here, roll, put this down, and then go on printing. And printing on the C64, especially when I got my C64, I didn't have any kind of software like VIC20 or whatever there was out there. So I had to do this in BASIC. And you have to open the channel to the printer, pretty much like formatting a disk, and then send the commands. And all the commands you do, like print and stuff like that, go to that channel then. And so you can print stuff. Let's take a quick look at the program. So in BASIC, you pretty much open a file, give it a logical number, which is 3 in this case. You tell it that you want to print, which is 4. You redirect the commands that follow to the printer or the file up here in this case, and you can just print, which prints listing on the printer, and then we do a list command which also goes to the printer. So every command that follows after the CMD3 reroutes all the output to the printer. So we will switch on the printer, and then we will start the program. And as you can see, it's a program that pretty much prints itself. And it even prints the ready, because we didn't reroute the command after list. So that is a pretty easy way to do some printing in BASIC. So that was my way of printing to the printer back in the day. And when I got the printer, I had no idea how to do this. Had to call my best friend's father to ask him how to print to a printer, because he was very proficient in BASIC and the C64 and stuff like that. And he told me that little program. And of course I could have had a look at the manual, which provides just that program, but I didn't. So this is the MPS 801. One other thing to notice is the motor to move this printhead right here is so weak that when I got my printer, I initially thought it would be defective. Because if you have this at just the slightest angle, it won't print. It won't move the head. So the motor is so weak, at least on my printer it was, that I had to return it 2 times to the shop where I bought it. And when we put it on their table, just printed fine, got home, no print. And eventually I thought about leveling the desk. I don't know why I did that. And then it did print. And that was one of the strangest things in this construction I'd ever experienced. Yeah, so that's the MPS 801 printer, my very first printer, and still a good looking printer, I think. So next printer in line is the MPS 803. And if you compare it in size to the MPS 801, you can see it's a much more compact printer. I didn't have this back in the day. Actually, for the C64, I only had the MPS 801. And you could do graphics with the MPS 801 also. Just 7 pixels at a line, or 7 dots at a line. Got this in a bundle. I guess if I try to calculate the price from the bundle and get out the price for the printer, it would be about 4 or 5 euros. Did not come with a working ribbon, so you have to open this from here, and it does have a different ribbon than the other one. MPS 801 had this very small ribbon which attached to the printhead, and here you have a ribbon which is kept in place, and you have the ribbon here, so the printhead moves over the complete way of the ribbon. And this does actually work. I did change the ribbon, try to test print, works. And you have some opening and closing mechanism inside here to stick to the paper. And as you can see, it doesn't have the tractor to move the paper around. So this works with normal plain paper. Yeah, in terms of interfacing, pretty much the same like before. You do have the serial connector to daisy chain it to 5041. You can again select the device number, and you can select the printer number. So this can be device 4 or 5, and it can be printer 6 or 8. Yeah. And I think this also is a 7-dot matrix printer. If it isn't, you will find it down here in the video in editing. Which brings us to the means of data storage on the C64 and VIC20. And what first comes to mind, and the first device I ever had to store data, was a very classic Commodore dataset. And this is slow, this is unreliable to a point. You could use standard music cassettes to store data and load data from, and a lot of games came on these cassettes, especially from Mastertronic and Codemasters and stuff like that, for about 10 marks, Deutschmarks back in the day, which was pretty much pocket money price, so you could, or I could afford a game or two a month, which was pretty nice. And there were some decent titles with on dataset. But it was slow, you couldn't do a random seek of files, which means you had to sequentially fast forward to a point or rewind to a point to get to a specific game. And so you need this counter to write down the number where the next game started and stuff like that. And it was slow as hell. Slow as hell. But on the other hand, the 1541 wasn't really fast either, but it was much, much faster than this device. There were various versions of this dataset. This is, I guess, the standard, it's even called dataset. There was a CN2, I guess, which was mainly used on the PET. And there were replacements or third-party stuff like this year, the Turbo Corder. And later on with the C16 and the Plus 4 and C116 came this dataset, which is almost identical, but has one very important difference in that it has this 7-pin connector. And I have the original adapter, so I can use this both on a C16 type machine and the standard C64. It doesn't have any major difference to the original dataset. So I will spare you the pain of loading a game from this. We will take a look at games in the next chapter. So stick around for that, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's take a look at the floppy drives, and then let's take a look at the other means of data storage on the C64 that I currently have. So next up we have these, and maybe we start with the classic 1541 with a, I call this a snapper mechanism. Don't know if that's the right term, but that is the one I had back in the day. Not exactly this one, but this model with a snapper. Just one with a handle to turn. And this specific model had the SpeedDOS mod. So there's actually one more port for the extension cable which connects to the user port, I guess. And you have two serial ports to daisy chain a second drive or printer, power, and a power switch. And we can, of course, take a look. It's the model 1541, the very classic 1541. So maybe let's open this and have a look inside. And this is a so-called shortboard. There are versions of the 1541. This is the beige edition, and there's a more white than beige edition, which is called VIC 1541. And that version comes in two flavors. This is a shortboard version, and there's a longboard version, which even goes, I guess, up to here on the main board. And these longboard versions of the VIC 1541, the lighter version of this, are worth a little more, or much more than these here, at least in Germany. And you have a standard disk drive mechanism, and you have the main board. Most notably, it's missing the 6502, I guess A or C, don't quite recall, which I tried to fix the PET with. And the reason why this disk drive was so expensive. And let me quickly grab my boxed version, which is here. So this is a German boxed version of the 1541. As you can see, it did cost 648 Deutsche Mark back in the day. And I guess this was already the reduced price. I guess it started at 700 something, which was a lot of money. Considered that the C64 was sold for $699. So you pretty much had to buy a second C64. I can take a look at this in a moment. So why was it so expensive? It was so expensive because it was a complete computer inside here. So this is pretty much a second computer, because the interface of the C64 and VIC20 on the C64 side had a fault, and so they had to come up with a design that pretty much implied that the floppy could do its own processing. There's even a demo, and I will do a video about this demo, which runs completely, a C64 demo, which runs completely off of a 1541, and you connect the serial port to the screen, and you can switch off the C64, and you can let the demo run completely alone on the 1541, which is pretty amazing and a little scary that you had to buy two computers just to get a disk drive for the C64. That's why this was so fucking expensive. The other thing missing here is a BIOS ROM for the disk drive, because this is a place where the SpeedOS ROM set, and I extracted that from here and did send this to Noel from Noel's Retro Lab, along with the cable and stuff like that. And I guess even the C64 this came with. So this was also a bundle. And he might make a project. About the SpeedOS stuff I sent him. At least he did a mail call video about it. Yeah, that is the 1541. This is my spare parts machine right now. Then there came the 1541-2. There's also a 1541C version of this, which is again in a lighter color that matches the Commodore 64 2 or C variant. Yeah, this one has the power supply inside, so it got quite hot. This one has an external power supply, and I have two of these recently bought in a bundle with some machines, I guess. And I fixed one of these in a mail video where the handle was detached, or the mechanism for the handle was detached from the drive. Yeah, pretty much the same, except for that you could select the device number up here, which is quite nice. You had to open this up, the old 5041 up, if you wanted to change the device number. And if you had two drives, you had to fiddle around inside. You can do this just by jumpering the device number here. Yeah. So power connector here is not the standard power plug, but the plug for the power supply, which is external, which lets this thing run much cooler and also makes it much smaller. If we compare the sizes, so if you take a look, that is pretty much the power supply, and that is externalized on this one. It's not a faster drive or anything. That would have been the 1571, and I had one of these too. I did have the 128, both the desktop model and the Brett Binish model, and that had the 1571, I guess, inside. I had a 1570 drive, which I sold because at one point I was going for a collection with machines I really owned back in the days and had an attachment to, and I never owned a 128 back in the days, or 128D. So I just kept a boxed 1541 and these are my go-to drives for testing anything on disk, because they are small, handy, and they fit on my desk pretty nice, and I don't have to break out the massive 1541. So let's take a look at the boxed version of this. Again, comes in this, like the C64, in this cardboard box with a styrofoam, small Commodore logo. The box is pretty non-descriptive, no pictures or anything, it's just single floppy disk Commodore computers. Doesn't even say which one. Here we go. And we get the classic styrofoam attached to cable situation. This is a pretty clean model. As you can see, I even left the protective film on top. And this works flawlessly, looks good, was part of some bundle, is unmodded. Just a nice 1541, just the way I had it back in the day. And I will eventually show you at the end of this room tour my complete setup of my final C64 I had with the floppy drive and the printer and all that. Already showed you the one with the black and white screen, and I did get a color TV at some point, which I don't have anymore. By the way, here's a demo disc, or 2 demo discs, I guess. Some cabling, and that is pretty much all you get inside this. Don't know if there was a manual, can't recall. Okay, last but not least, there are 2 more means of saving data on the C64, or loading data from the C64. One is the SD to IEC, at least 2 more methods I have around here, which uses a standard SD card and does floppy emulation. You plug this into the serial port of the C64, that into the tape port. This is only used for 5 volts, so you could actually mod this to use a USB cable or some external power supply. And this would free the cassette port. And there are also versions which you could put into the machine. You could also put in this in the machine by simply soldering wires to this and put it into the C64. It does have 2 buttons for next and previous disk. And there's a program you load, which is called, I guess, FC64, which gives you access to the SD card and lets you select which D64 image to load or to prepare to load in this, and then it opens that, and you can use this like a standard floppy or disk. Yeah, pretty neat, pretty nice. It's my go-to thing to load data from disk. Next up, we have the EasyFlash 3 with my own printed case. This allows you to use different kernel versions actually on your C64. Plus it allows you to store cartridge files. There's loads and loads of games and stuff specially prepared for the EasyFlash 3 in cartridge form, which you can load on here. And there are different means of loading onto this thing. My way would be to attach a USB cable, plug the cartridge in the C64, plug this in the PC, and then you can connect to this, and you can do various things. You can, for example, start a program on the C64 via USB, and this will bring up the program instantly. You can use this to actually write D64 image files to real disks. So you load a D64 image file up here on the PC. You say send, and then it will copy the D64 file or the content of the D64 file, which is a compressed format for C64 disks, onto a real disk, which is inserted into a into a 5041, which is attached to a C64. So this is pretty neat to get real disks from D64 images. Yeah, you have several slots where you can store stuff on, and Adrian Black showed this lots of times in his videos. So I will just show you this in at a quick glance, and yeah. Good. So these are my means of media to store and load stuff and to print stuff. And we'll take a quick look at the SD to IEC and at the Easy Flash right now. Okay, first up we take a look at the SD to IEC. So this plugs right in the back of the C64. You can plug in your 1541 here, and it uses both the cassette port and the serial port. But if you load it's called FB64. Which is the file browser for the C64. I think there are versions for other machines also. And then you can see it brings up the D64 files on this SD card. You can do folders and stuff like I did here. And you can see Turrican, ZMcCracken, Bomb Jack, and let's go into Bomb Jack. And you can start the program right here. So you just press enter, and the loading speeds are pretty much the same like with the original 1541. Yeah, there you go. No drive sounds or stuff like that, just plain SD card loading fun. And we say start. Yeah, here's Bomb Jack. You can also load PRG files and I guess also card files. So next up is the Easy Flash 3, which was featured in many of Adrian Black's videos. So this does have 3 buttons: a reset button, a menu button, and a special button. And the special button is a button like a freezer button. So if you have a freezer cartridge ROM on this thing, you can use this as the freezer button, and it works pretty reliably. It has a USB port on the side, so you can load stuff from your PC via this USB cable onto this. This is, I think, mini USB. Yeah. Yeah, and let's plug it in and see what it does. So this starts immediately with this menu, and you have different BIOS ROMs up here. You have the cartridge files down here, and you have Action Replay and stuff like that. The freezer modules down here. If you hit space, you can see more. Here are the programs to program this thing via the C64. But I do this over the USB connection from my PC. And these games load instantaneously. So they are converted to CRT files, which are cartridge files. And if you push a button, say Bruce Lee, there's no loading. The game is there immediately. And many games and programs have been converted online to CRT files. So if you have a Easy Flash 3, you have no load time at all. You can load many games, even popular games like, I guess, Last Ninja, which were multi-disc games as CRTs, and put them on the Easy Flash. That's pretty neat. Yeah, that's Bruce Lee. Pretty nice. So another thing you can do is you can copy D64 images via PC onto the disk drive. I made a video about this, how to create C64 disks using Easy Flash 3. I will put a link in the description below. And you can also start from the PC PRG files directly on the PC. That's pretty nice too. So you have to do the PC connection, start a program which is which you can download from the EasyFlash 3 website. And you can use this program to remotely start programs on the C64. That's pretty cool. This is Retro is your new black. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time.